Hey, everyone, and welcome to Money Talks Wealth Beyond Numbers. We are back here again with an awesome guest. We have Bobby Clark here with us, and I had the luxury of having a conversation with him beforehand. So you are in for a treat. But before I jump into the interview, I will just let Mr. Clark give you a brief introduction to himself, how he got into his field quickly, and anything else he'd like to share before we hop in.
Thank you, Dr. Constance. I really appreciate that and the opportunity to be here to speak with you today and talk about some important things. And as we go forth, share our thoughts and our ideas about how we can help people along the way. Just a little bit about me. I'm a financial coach and I'm the founder and owner of Clark on Money Financial Coaching Services, a service that guides STEM professionals, that people that professionals in science, technology, engineering, math, who feel strained by money stress and guide those to a happier, more confident life. I'm a certified professional financial educator and a financial accountability coach. I'm active in a couple of important memberships that has to do with coaching. The Accountable Network is an international group of financial coaches who offer guided steps to financial freedom through coaching, through resources, events, and also the Association for Financial Counseling and Planning is also a national organization for financial counseling, coaching, and education. I enjoy gardening, have a garden out back. I enjoy sports. I've been married for 50 years and I have two kids and four adorable grandkids. I got into coaching and personal finance maybe about 10 or 15 years ago, actually doing the actual coaching. I started at work and just talking to people about their personal finances and listening to them talk about the challenges and the things that they were going through. And I was just sharing the experiences that I had and didn't really look at it as coaching at that time. But as I went on and I was able to retire, I realized that I had something to offer. I enjoyed personal finance and I decided to just get into the coaching part of it. And from that, I launched my business and here I am today.
Thank you for sharing that. Let us not glaze over 50 years of marriage. My goodness. That's fantastic. I'm coming up on 20 years in September, so I'm super excited about that. Yeah. There isn't a time where I can really imagine my life without my husband. I feel like I grew up with him. So 20 years is nothing to sneeze at. But for you, I'm sure you have your successful children and now you have the grands. We got four grands too. So we know what that's like getting to love up on them. But to your point about your industry background, so finance wasn't your primary industry that you got into?
No, my primary industry was chemistry, and I've served as a laboratory technician, technologist, and various aspects working on the chemistry lab. Working, and I enjoyed that a lot. But always in the back of my mind, there was this personal finance. And that goes back to when I was a kid, 7 or 8 years old. My grandfather was his primary source of income was shining shoes, and he was a big influence in my life. And at one point, he bought me a shoe shine kit as a gift. I think it was a birthday present. And he taught me how to shine shoes and told me that I could make money shining shoes. And that's where that money aspect started from. And it just grew out of that. My father owned the business. So there he brought home the receipts every night and we would sit around the table to count the receipts and get ready for the next day. So he taught me how to do things like that. My mom was a second grade teacher, so she was always there supporting me. And, we just had a time in our family, which is somewhat unusual, but we talked about money a lot. And that was the real foundation of my interest in money.
Yeah, that actually leads us right into our first talking point, which I wanted you to expand on a little bit that you shared about how your grandfather was someone who you could watch or he modeled before you, what entrepreneurship looked like. They might not have been calling it that back then, but that's really what it was. He was enterprising by going ahead and taking something that he could do to earn a living. But also, like you shared, that it spilled over onto your father and onto you. And so how important is it for us as parents to model good behaviors financially or even in how we earn money before our children?
That's a great question. When we are born early in our life, there are people who are our caretakers who protect us, and we learn to trust them, to lean and depend on them, and they're our parents, maybe our siblings, grandparents, uncles, aunts, teachers, and others in our environment. And their behavior, their attitudes, and what they model before us is what we know. It's like we watch them when they don't know that we're watching them, and they watch us when we don't know. We also listen to them when they don't know that we're listening to them. And that's how we learn early on. And that is where the basis start from in terms of our attitude toward money and how we think about money. We hear those things even today, some things that our parents might have said about money. Even today, I can remember my mom talking about, we just paid the house off. We just paid the house off. And those kind of things like that, it didn't mean a whole lot to me back then, but as I became, an adult and a parent and making house payments, it resonated with me, and that was one of my goals to get to the point where I could say the same thing. So yeah, it has a big influence on us. Hopefully, that influence is a positive influence, but a lot of times not always a positive influence, and that can be to our detriment.
So let me ask you, as you just stated, modeling good financial behaviors obviously has a good impact on the youth that are watching, not just the children but nieces and nephews and neighbors kids, right? But what about the mistakes that we might make it with our money? Like, for example, I did a podcast a couple years ago on Mother's Day with my daughter, and it was a marital counselor who had asked us to come on, and he wanted to honor mothers and the dynamic between mothers and their children. And so at that time, me and my daughter were able to share, the good things about our relationship, but also the things that were a bit challenging, especially as we were getting into the adolescent years and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things that my daughter had shared on that podcast was like, even through my mom's mistakes, or what you would consider to be mistakes, in rearing them, in entrepreneurship, even in watching my marriage from time to time, she'd say, I learned a lot from those mistakes, right? And so I know oftentimes we try to shield our children from bad experiences, but sometimes those bad experiences can be an opportunity for us to have conversations about those things, and also to let them see what they may not want to do. That's a learning experience too. Would you agree?
Certainly, we're gonna make mistakes no matter what, no matter how hard you try. And as we go through life, we find ourselves in unfamiliar situations, and a lot of times we're not sure what to do, and sometimes the thing that we do don't turn out to be uh, the best for us. Recall a story that I read where a young son or young kid and his sister were on the playground playing. His sister fell and broke her arm. Parents took her to the hospital and got her, mended and everything, and came back, and they were talking. The husband and the wife was talking, and they was talking about not having enough insurance. And the brother overheard that, and his takeaway from that was, I better always have enough insurance in case somebody in my family gets hurt or need help. And he grew up with that mindset of always having insurance to the point
Hmm.
where he might have been overinsured at times. But because of
Yeah.
that incident, and when he heard his family talk about it and his sister, he was always certain to have insurance. So we can learn from all kind of mistakes. Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. Tell us a little bit more about your business when you shared that you had gone in from STEM into financial coaching. Like tell us a little bit more about what you do and then you have a is it a framework called BASE?
Yes, I have a framework, and BASE is one of the support systems of my overall framework. But I use base a lot because base is very important, and base is like a foundation. Instead of saying a foundation, I use the word acronym base because it's shorter, but it has to
Yeah.
do with the beliefs. Your attitude is the A, S is the stories, and E is your emotions. And our belief, we talked about it already, how they are formed. It's generational. We get those from people of our influence, as I said earlier, our foreparents, siblings, and all those people, the rich uncle that comes around to the parties and things like that, who may not be really rich, but they look like he look like he's rich. So we get, we want to be like people like that, and what they say. So that shapes our base. I was spoke with a high school group last week, a group of seniors, and I just posed a question. I said, "Are all poor people lazy?" And one of the students said, "Yes, they're all lazy." And so I said, "Why do you say that?" He said, "Because of they don't work." Well, that was his belief,
Right.
even though it might not have been true in all instances. That's what he believed. But that's how belief and our beliefs can shape our the way we our attitude. Another one is rich people might have stole their wealth. They didn't earn it. Well, that's not true. That's not true. But people believe all kind of things like that. And the next thing is the attitude, which is kin to belief, and they can be influenced by our belief. But if you believe that your spouse is not trustworthy with money, anytime you have a money conversation with your spouse, you're going to have a negative attitude because you can't trust what you think that they're really not being truthful to you or not not coming forth with the right information. So your attitude is going to be bad in that meeting. And then we have the stories. That's our relationship with money. And it's nothing more than a collection of narratives, our subconscious thoughts about money and how we spend money. If you look at how you spend money, that's your money story. You got, a closet full of shoes, that's your money story. Or if you got fancy cars or whatever, that's your money story. So how you spend money is it's your story. If you're a spendthrift and you hoard money, you don't spend it, you big saver. That's your story, and that impacts how you handle your money. And emotions, these are nothing more than short-term attitude. This is the physical part of your attitude. Do you get angry or joy or fear or calmness? Are you stressful when the conversation about money comes forward? So, and then there's growth and accountability that's involved making lasting change, being accountable to yourself or to someone else, and how you handle money. And that's your base. So in order for you to have a successful money behavior, you have to have a strong base.
I love how you broke that down for us. As, like you said, instead of saying a foundation for how you build on your understanding about money and how you navigate it in this lifetime, you use the acronym of BASE and then you break it down in such a easy to understand way, very relatable. When you're dealing with someone, let's say a new coaching client, when they come in, are they initially introduced to BASE or is this some part of a later part of the journey with you?
it's a later part of the journey because a lot of times people come in and they ask for a budget or a spending plan, or they want to get out of debt, and that's just a surface level goal. It's not a deep goal. A lot of times there's not much motivation behind that because if there was a lot of motivation behind it, they could probably solve it themselves, right? But they
Mhm.
need help. They need guidance. They need accountability. And so there's four phases that's an overall umbrella of what we do. And that's refocus and control, got a plan, and growth and accountability. So, like in the refocus stage, that's where we find out the why. What's the reason? What's the underlying reason for wanting, for example, a budget or a spending plan or get out of debt? What's the driver? Where's the motivation behind that? So we have to find that motivation because you're going to be challenged as you go forth to, for example, get out of debt or pay off the bills or whatever. You're going to be challenged and there are going to be some setbacks, but you have to have that deep motivation to push through that. And then there's the gain control stage. Once you have your why, you identified your priorities, you identified your goals. Now it's time to take a little bit of action. And you take action in a unique way, a way that's suitable for you, that's comfortable for you, that's designed for you, because no two people are alike. So you can't coach everyone the same.
Right.
So we have to have that uniqueness, and that's where your money plan come in, time management, creating positive habits, being intentional about the things you do day in and day out, and taking control. And then you have the plan that's actual, the concrete goal that you set, you take off, moving forward, you're getting traction, you're setting milestones, celebrating success, you eliminating debt. Maybe you want to start investing, or maybe you want to go on vacation, or pay off a house, or send your kids to college, and things like that. That's where the plan comes in. You set the plans, and then you grow. You have your aspirations, and you hope for your future, and you celebrate all those kind of things. And then there's the accountability partner. Without the accountability partner, you're probably gonna have to struggle a little bit because that's where you need someone there who maybe is not a close friend, but somebody who can tell you when you're not doing the things you say that you wanted to do, or you're struggling through the things and you think about giving up or quitting. You need someone there to provide that support, and that support is critical. It's usually a external partner, as a coach, there'll be our advisor or someone like that to bring things into harmony and to keep you focused and to cheer you on. As you make progress. A lot of times, we're making progress, but we don't think it's progress because we're looking at the big picture. But each step is worth celebrating because that builds the momentum to make the next step and the next step. So that accountability partner is really important in the overall plan of coaching.
I love how you explain this because that is really the purpose of this particular podcast, where we say money talks, having conversations about money, but it's not always just about the budgeting, the credit score, the assets under management. Like it's a part of it, but we understand, like you said, that there are beliefs that sometimes need to be focused on. There are emotions tied to experiences that we've had that help to shape those beliefs. And so sometimes we have to talk with someone and get a different perspective on what that experience could have meant for the person. And so when we say wealth beyond numbers, that's exactly what it is. What is your journey to transforming your money story and transforming your new behaviors into something that you can be proud of, something that you can then model before those that are watching, not just your children, but maybe even some family members, you know? because there's such a thing as learned helplessness where a person just resolves that this is not for me. This thing doesn't work out for us, whoever us is. And so when you're able to sit down with someone and help to reframe their thought processes and give them some tools to use now, they no longer have that same story. And so I love what you're doing. You talked a bit about accountability partner, and I'm sure that you and some of our financial colleagues, even people like me, planners, investment advisors, insurance brokers, all of these kinds of people can be those accountability partner. But how do you feel about, even a spouse, someone that you love and trust being a accountability partner? I know you've been married a long time. So how does that dynamic work where you might come from two different backgrounds? You might have different experiences, some painful, some joyful. And so, how do you think a spouse could play a role as an accountability partner?
That's a great question. It really is. And you mentioned something that's very important, coming from two backgrounds. Typically, that's going to be the situation where you raised in one household with a different perspective on money, and your spouse coming from another environment with a different perspective on money, and to try to work that out. Uh, and bring everything together is very challenging. And a lot of times, as you know, money is one of the reasons why most people get a divorce. It just
Mhm.
they can't make it work, and it doesn't, and so they give up. But one of the things that's most important about marriage, whether it's money or anything else, is the communication.
Yeah,
We have to
definitely.
learn how to communicate, and one of the tools that we use to teach communication is in case of spouses is to have money talk,
Mm,
and
okay.
we have a framework that we use, and I'll share that with you. The framework is when you having the money talks with your spouse. One of the first things that we teach is to have it on one subject only,
Mm,
one
okay.
subject, maybe 10, 15 minutes to the most. Find a quiet area where there's no distractions. Determine who's going to be uh, in the meeting. If it's just you and your spouse, or maybe you're having a meeting and it requires that your parents being there. Maybe you're talking something about your parents, or maybe you're having a conversation with the kids involved as well. But determine who's going to be in there and come into the meeting open-minded, willing to discuss what the topic is. And if things don't seem to be going out of the control, just pause the meeting. Don't allow the meeting to go and out of hand and tempers flare and things like that. You want to pause it before that and come back at another time. So that's the
Yeah.
basic framework. And when you do that, your money talks become a lot more productive. You feel like you're not taking all matters in your hands and you are going at it all alone. You have help, and you're more encouraged to have talks again and again. And you can see the results over time by having those positive money talks. But it's a process, it's not an event. You have to learn how to do that. But when you do learn how to do it and you use it as a positive tool, it's amazing what you and your spouse can accomplish together.
Yeah, because then you can go back to one of those former quick little talks that you did last week, last month or something. And like you say, don't dump on each other. Multiple things at one time. And I know there can be multiple things happening at once, but our minds and our emotions can't handle all of that at once, not in a positive way at least.
Yeah.
And so you'll be able to go back and say, "Oh, last week remember we talked about dad going into a nursing home. We decided X. Now this part, what about mom?" Right? And so it doesn't feel so heavy at once, and then you have a collaborative energy to it, even though there might be one person who kind of leads the conversation, but
Yeah.
the other person doesn't feel left out. They feel part of it. They've been invited in a way to the table to bring up their ideas and concerns. The other thing is we have a financial well-being planner that we are in pre-launch of, and in that planner we have journal prompts in there because we want people to, like you said, get in touch with their money stories, and there's plenty of them. If you've been on this earth a while, you probably got a lot of different stories. But was there any prompt that you can say stood out to you that you thought was important, such as, do you have any limit, or did you have any limiting beliefs as it related to your own money story? Or did you inherit some of your beliefs from family? Or maybe even, what's your current money story? Is it better now than it used to be?
Well, one of the things that I learned early on from my dad, and he would tell me when I first started working as a teenager, save some of your money. Say even if you only save a dime out of a dollar, save some of your money, and that way you will always have something in reserve in case something happens, because something's going to happen somewhere down the line. And I use that even today. I'm probably more of a saver than I am a spender. And my wife will probably say she's a spender more than she's a saver. But the two work so well together. Over the years, we found out how to make that work where everybody gets what they want. And in the end, we're all happy. So I would say, save some of your money, and in the face of over risk, risking over saving. Don't worry about that. So that's what I would say. And another thing about wealth is people talk about wealth, but wealth is something is it's an individual definition. I think
Hmm.
everyone has to define wealth for themselves. It's not always money. It can be health. It can be a happy family. It can
Yes.
be a long marriage.
Yep.
So it's up to the individual how they want to define wealth. And if you always look at it in terms of money, you may not ever achieve any happiness.
That's a
You're
good point.
constantly trying to get more and more and more. But you have to realize at some point what's enough.
Mm. I've heard people say, and I do believe this as well, when they say health is wealth. I had experienced some really devastating health issues right around the time that I had turned 40. About to be 46. But when I turned 40, I was looking forward to that experience. I had heard that you're now grown at 40, your mindset changes, your boundaries change. And I was so excited about going into that. And my body started to fail, my mental started to fail, and I at that time had a thriving business, so I was a bit confused as to, like, why me, why now, why this of all things, because I didn't have any prior health or mental challenges that I knew of. And I brought that up because it set me down for nearly 2 years, to be honest. And it was right around the time that the pandemic was hitting. So I had been sitting down, running back and forth to hospitals, having a bunch of tests and things like that. My weight was shifting around. And right around the time that I was getting a little bit better, that's when the pandemic hit. And then everybody had to go and sit down. And I was like, come on now. I was like, I'm ready to come outside. And now everybody's in. And so it really made me feel like I wasn't able to accomplish my goals. I didn't have control over my situation. And then here comes big government telling us, no, you can't do this, you can't do that, you've got to stay home. People were pivoting in terms of how they served their clients, whether they couldn't do it in person anymore. They maybe had to pivot to remote work. And it was just an eye opener to, yes, I had a health issue that caused me to sit down. And thankfully, I did have benefits where I could have the short term and the long term benefits. It wasn't everything that I was used to bringing in, but it definitely kept us out of the poorhouse for
Yeah.
sure. But then, when these third party things happen in our lives, like you talked about, life will happen. You need to have some savings. Right now we're experiencing some political volatility where every day things are changing, laws are changing, access is changing. And that's traumatic experience, I think, for most because it disrupts your norms. And anything that disrupts your norms can cause an emotional reaction. It can hit you in the pocket a bit. And what's your thoughts on when someone feels like they're out of control with third party things like the pandemic or even these political changes? What's your stance on how can they navigate things like this where they feel they're not in control of it?
Being in control is what we are taught to do. We have to realize that we can't always control everything. So we have to learn to control what we can control. I'm a big baseball fan. I'm gonna share this story with you. I'm a big baseball fan. Played baseball since I was in Little League, played through college. And one of my favorite ball players is Barry Bonds. Played for the San Francisco Giants. Tremendous player, home run hitter, MVP, and all these kind of awards and recognition. And I just so happened I was on the internet and on YouTube, and I saw one of his videos after he retired, and he talked about his challenge and with the pitcher, and his goal was to be laser focused on the pitcher. It was a battle between he and the pitcher. He said, I didn't worry about the other seven guys that were behind the pitcher. I couldn't control them. My goal was to defeat the pitcher. I had to be laser focused on the pitcher. He said, even though I might have hit the ball very hard and one of his supporting players caught it and I made it out, I defeated him because I hit the ball very hard. The next time I was up at the bat, he will know that I did that. So what I'm trying to say is you have to be focused on what you can control and work on those things. Be laser focused on what you can control and try to get better each time, each day, each week, each month, each year. Try to get better at the thing that you can control. And that's how I would handle it.
I love your response, Mr. Clark. It allows us to be human, right, and have our feelings, but not to let our feelings control our behaviors,
Yeah.
right? And I love how you tied it all in. A lot of these third party situations are not things that are within our hands until the smoke clears or the dust clears and we really see what it's about. But can we control what we do have access to? Can we control how we spend our resources or what we spend it on or who we give it to? I know that there are a lot of campaigns around, supporting marginalized communities or supporting Black owned businesses, things of that. These are things that are in our control and do give us a sense of peace and contribution in a way. So I just love how you're able to take something that seemingly is a negative or seemingly can be a challenge and pivot it and reframe it into something that we can walk away feeling better about. I have been really enjoying our conversation today, loving how you were able to tie in the importance of how watching your elders to do what they were doing to earn a living, but it had an impact on you. And also, how you coach, the frameworks that you use, how intentional you are about not just looking at their budget sheets and if their credit is improving or if they are saving more, but really helping them understand that I understand there's some beliefs that you come to the table with. I understand that if even if you're married, that you might come from two different backgrounds, but how can you merge those things in a way that allows you to be good stewards over what you have? And how do you model that before your children or those that are watching? And then I also want to say that, yes, I do believe it is a good thing for us to save, Oftentimes people will say, I don't have any money left over at the end of the month to save. But that just lets us know that if we are positioned to have some employer based plans where they're contributing pre tax, now they've taken it before you even got it, right? So now it's gone, it's put away somewhere where it can grow. And so, even with that perspective, you are still saving, for that rainy day, for those emergencies, and of course, for your long term retirement. But I just want to thank you for coming on the show. Is there any way that people can catch up with you online, or if you have any new products or services that are being launched, how can they get in touch with
Yeah.
you?
Well, they can contact me at my website. My website is accountable.net/ Bobby Clark website. You also can follow me on LinkedIn as well. I'm there, and also on my LinkedIn profile, there's a newsletter that you can sign up for, and I publish the newsletter twice a month. And you can follow me there. Also, starting next month, I will be launching a webinar on LinkedIn, and it's called The Mix. And we just myself and one of my colleagues will be on there for about 30 minutes, just talking about personal finance, talking about life, and sharing stories like we have today. So I invite everyone to join us on the webinar as well.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much again, Mr. Clark, for coming on Money Talks Wealth Beyond Numbers. And until next time, please be at peace and remember that wealth is not just what you hold, it is what you heal. So thank you so much for joining us. Until next time.
Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.